Is your retirement facing a midlife crisis? Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking with David Blanchett about the great midlife retirement crisis. And David, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had you on a few months ago. We talked about, is your retirement plan flawed? And now we're talking about the great midlife financial crisis or retirement crisis. So tell me a little bit more about how that came about and just it came out through a survey, but just tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I would say recently, Prudential released a pretty impressive survey. It's called the Pulse of Retirement. I think the name changes every year, looking at just how people perceive retirement, how they perceive their readiness, what are their concerns. And I think it's important to just be aware of the state of mind when it comes to Americans around retirement. I think that, I don't know that retirement's the right word anymore. I like to use the word financial independence, but, I think that there very much is different places people are at in terms of their readiness, as well as where things could go in the future. I mean, as kind of a follow along, PGIM released something last week focused on the same issue of retirement crisis and individual savings. So I think that for me, what all of this suggests is just the need for individuals to have a plan and to kind of track their progress as they go. I think the last thing someone can do is kind of say, hey, I want to retire in 20 years and not worry about it, and then wake up in 10 or 15 years and realize they're nowhere close where they need to be. So overall, the survey isn't necessarily overly positive, but it does suggest some directions we can go.
Yeah, you've got it. And it's been interesting. There's been a lot of these surveys lately. I was looking at one from the American College, and they talk about it's kind of similar stuff you see through the news that no one's prepared. Americans just don't even know what they're talking about with money. But it was interesting. What they saw is that as you get older, you know more about your money. And also as you use a financial advisor, you kind of get educated and learn more about your money. Are you seeing anything along those lines, or is this maybe just like a point in time situation?
So, just like this survey has been done a number of times. I would say that when I worked with them to some extent, looked at the results in some depth. I mean, so this was focused on individuals right now, but I think to your point, like the findings are really kind of echoed in a variety of surveys out there. So like one of the key statistics was that looking at 55-year-olds, I think 55 is a really good age to focus on because if you're 65 it's kind of too late. If you're 75 you're already retired. If you're 45 you're not sure you're going to be doing, and the numbers aren't great, right? I think that we saw that like the median savings is like $50,000 for 55-year-olds. There's kind of other metrics out there that in the survey that would suggest that people by and large aren't prepared. But you pointed, about things like literacy. So like I'm an adjunct professor at the American College. They released their annual literacy survey, 6 months ago. And I think that, there are things that we could be doing to help individuals save more. I love advice. I want to find ways to get every person on this planet some form of advice. I'm not convinced that we can do that one-on-one with advisors given economies of scale, but the more people are educated and the more help that they have, the better they're going to be prepared to achieve their financial goals. And so that comes in tons of in forms or fashion. But to me, if it isn't like the number one takeaway from these, it's close to it. It's that people need help, and they probably need help earlier, right? Like, yes, you can make some course corrections at 55, but like if you could have gotten really good help and guidance at 45 or 35, I think that's what we need to get people in a better place when they retire.
It's interesting you mentioned that with 55, because I talked to a lot of basically a 64-year-old is the one calling me up and saying, I'd like some help with retirement today. Like, I want to retire today. Help me out. I remember talking with a lot of 55-year-olds, and a lot of them tell me, I wish I had learned this earlier. I wish my kids would know this. So they're thinking about, what their 25-year-old kids are doing, and they're kind of regretting or reimagining, what if I had done things different earlier? So it's interesting what you're saying, that, the earlier the intervention, I guess, to start planning towards retirement, the better. And you're seeing that in the surveys.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the key is that like the more time you have, the more time you have to make better choices, right? And like yes, investing well reduces your savings, but saving is like the most important thing that's going to get most people to retirement, right? I mean, some folks might win the lottery, others might get an inheritance. For most Americans, you got to save money, right? And the more you save, the earlier you save it, the better off you're going to be. And I think that that for better or for worse, many Americans, especially younger Americans, have a variety of competing financial goals, right? Financial needs. They've got to pay off student loans. They've got to buy a house. They've got to pay for childcare. And like those are all very real things. I feel a lot of those currently. But just kind of creating those savings behaviors at an earlier age are really, really important. I think that, one of the things that is essential to kind of get more Americans on track is having workplace retirement plans. Asking someone to put aside money, whatever's left at the end of the year, like that is not a good strategy to create savings. Like, having access to an employer sponsored 401k where you can choose to save money before you even see it. I think we need more systems like that to make it easier. But then also to the earlier point, just the education around why starting to save early, even if it's a little bit, is important for the long term.
Yeah, it's interesting too, and I think this is why you call it the midlife crisis, or Prudential did. Someone in your PR department did a good job with the naming
Well,
of it.
the best, the best. So, rarely am I like, that was really clever. And I cannot take credit for this. This is going to be really clear, is that they had this term like the silver squatters. And
Yes.
that was really good. I was like, that is incredibly clever. And what it is, it's just kind of this fact that more Americans who are going to enter retirement are not ready. They have very little saved, and they're going to have to rely on their kids who are also likely financially constrained to help them make the retirement. And that is not an ideal situation. I was just kind of actually having a conversation, if we can call it that, on LinkedIn with someone the other day, and he was talking about how he knows someone whose parents, really the gentleman's parents are in bad shape for retirement, but like they sent their kids to really nice schools, they did all these really nice things, and so
Hmm.
I was like, well, where's the failure there? Like, how do we feel about what happened? But then his point was like, well, like who I care about is are these parents' kids. We're going to have to take care of them. And so they're having to raise kids. They're going to have to take care of parents. I think that is going to create potentially a really interesting situation where, because these silver squatters, like, for lack of a better term, didn't save enough for retirement, their kids or their extended family all of a sudden becomes more responsible for their livelihoods, and that obviously isn't ideal.
Yeah, I think that's why you talked about like the midlife crisis. One, you're 55, and objectively, economically, you're less financially secure than the older generation, so maybe 70, 75-year-olds. But you've got these additional mental and emotional strains. You're feeling worse about it, so at least you're aware of this, I guess, is a positive. But it's interesting. I mentioned the caregiving part of it. Maybe they're feeling strained because they're caregiving already, and perhaps they're expecting, hey, we're gonna have to just keep passing it down. The younger generation will have to take care of the older one. I've got a podcast with another financial advisor, Danielle Mila, which talks about just that squeeze you feel if you are in a caregiving situation. And she was rather young, early into her career, and she was caregiving for her grandma. So you can
Yeah.
just see just the financial strain that happens for a lot of people there.
Well, and so I think, like, and this is where I think a lot of, and I think about the things that I engage other intelligent people, and I like well educated, knowledgeable, and I think like how do we define the situation? Like there's clearly lots of instances in our country of individuals who are kind of falling through the cracks or chose to make not the best decisions for retirement for whatever reason. Like what does that mean for our country? I mean, part of me would love for us to move back to defined benefit plans, like in a full spectrum. It's never going to happen, right? Part of me is like, we should have mandated savings. That's never going to happen, right? Like, I just can't see us as a country, a country of choice, behind that. So I think like the key is how do we kind of evolve the system to help more people make good choices, but you still have to make good choices. You have to know that you have to make them. I think that's where things get difficult when you introduce, like resource constraints. And so it really is a dynamic situation that, as we see increased longevity, as we have more issues, like it's going to become a lot more complicated for a lot more Americans in the future.
Yeah. And of course, I mentioned Danielle Milo with the caregiving in this in the study. You found that women, here we are, two guys talking, but it's the females that face the bigger challenges because there's maybe an internal, but definitely a society pressure to take on these caregiving duties. And here we are, the example, myself, you, and Danielle, who I mentioned, she's the one, the female who's the one has gone through the caregiving part of it. So it's an interesting situation. What did you find there?
Yeah, well, I just think that the part of that, comes into play with overall expectations around retirement. Like in the survey, we found that women have only a third of savings at 55-year-olds than men. They are,
Mm.
more concerned about inflation, more concerned about housing prices. I mean, if we just take a step back too, the average female will live 3-ish years longer than the average male. The average female in a relationship or marriage is 2 years longer. That's 5 additional years. So I think the burdens of the risks in retirement and the emotional and financial strains really are going to be more felt by women than they are men, just given the host of issues that exist today around, who has to kind of bear longevity risk and who does take care of family members when things go wrong.
Yeah, I think part of it is just the failure to plan for the length of retirement. I feel like a lot of people hitting retirement, they're just trying to get the most money next month. I think they ought to figure out how to get the most money over their lifetime. And you've got to plan for kind of the end of your lifetime and your decisions early, how it'll affect then. And of course, like you mentioned, demographically, if it's a male-female couple, it's probably the female that's feeling the end of it, where all the problems might lie. So I think just going into retirement, so here we are talking to 55-year-olds, as you need to be saving more, but then as you approach retirement, remember, this is not how do you get 65-year-old self the most money, it's how do you get your most money over your lifetime, and the end of the lifetime is really what hits the females especially. And I think what was pointed out in the study is that a lot of times these traditional pensions are going away. You get full Social Security at 67 versus 65, like people that are maybe 20 years older than the 55-year-olds that are retiring out there. And an interesting part of the study too, and what I feel has been a good way to address some of this, is I found that even your typical pension, a lot of times, the federal government pension, interesting enough, the highest you can do as a survivorship on the federal government pension is 55% joint survivorship. So whatever
Oh,
you're
really?
getting when there's two of you, the best you can do is a 45% pay cut. You can't even get this 75% or 100% same amount as before. Yet with a lot of annuities, and where I kind of see just pricing wise, I feel like a joint lifetime annuity, I think just in general is I found right now in summer 2024, good pricing for people to look into. But it addresses that issue where Social Security will drop. If there's two of you, it'll go down to one. And a lot of
Right.
pensions maybe drop by 25 or 50%. But actions you take today as a 62-year-old can help that 85, 90-year-old, which is often the female in the couple. So tell me a bit about what you saw with kind of people looking at annuities and how it might help them through that retirement cycle.
Well, I mean, I think that anyone that studied this at any length knows that it's really hard to figure out how much you can spend in retirement. You don't know how long you're going to live. You don't know what the market's going to do, et cetera. And so there's probably 50 plus good years of research, kind of talking about the value of annuities. And I get, the word annuity is probably the most ambiguous word in our financial lexicon, right? It means so many different things. There's accumulation products, there's investment products, there's fixed products, there's variable products. I mean, it's complicated, but at their core, what they were kind of originally created to do is to create security around lifetime income. And so I think that, this survey, like others, demonstrate that people have a really strong interest in annuities. So 71% of respondents said they were interested in annuities, but only 6% of them included them as part of a strategy. And so I think like that's like the definition of the annuity puzzle, right? Where people, in theory should want to use them. When you ask them questions like, do you want more lifetime income? Oh, I would love some more. Do you want guaranteed income? I do. Want annuity? Oh no, I don't want that. And so I think part of it is just the word and then some of the baggage there. But I do see some kind of more seismic changes in our industry. I focus mostly on 401k plans. There's been a pretty big shift there, talking more about lifetime income solutions. I feel like more advisors are talking about them. So I think that longer term, the direction is very positive, where if you want to address the fear about living your resources, I think that you mentioned Social Security, that is the best place to go. Okay. But beyond that, annuities can be a very valuable solution in terms of creating that longevity protection.
Yeah, and it's that longevity protection helps out. That's usually the one of the top fears is running out of money, and
Right.
taking actions early to make sure you don't run out of money is a big way to allay those number one fears. I feel as if we've talked about the problems here facing a 55-year-old going through their midlife retirement crisis, but you identified some different actions that you can do as an individual, workplaces, so employers can do, the financial industry at large. So I'm going to go through a quick rundown. Let's see what's the number one thing each of these places can do. So what's if you're 55 years old, what is the number one thing that you can do to better prepare for retirement?
So, I mean, I always say if you haven't worked with a financial advisor and gotten a financial plan, that is what you absolutely need to do. You need a really strong sense of where you are. You don't want to pay for an AUM advisor. Find one that does it hourly. Like I'm not going to get bent out of shape what you do. If you have one, get a second opinion, right? I think you need you just need a good solid base of where you are and what you need to do. Because I think the key is what are the expectations, right? I think, so for example, people plan to retire at 65, they retire at 62 on average, right? That's a really important expectation that you should have someone. Like, I think that I did this. So when I did financial plans, I don't know, 15 years ago, I'd say, you're not going to retire at 65, just work until you're 70, you'll be fine. Well, the problem is that doesn't always happen. Right. And so I think that, giving someone as an advisor and then as the near retiree kind of an awareness of, hey, this is where things are. This is what you can do. How do you want to approach things? I think that to me is the key, because then they can start making informed decisions around their next steps.
Yeah, you might answer that together, but what would you say the number one thing a financial advisor can do to help a 55-year-old get ready for retirement?
So, I would say, like, as someone, I'm a portfolio manager, right? The investment is like the least important part of that equation. Like, I think really giving them a solid foundation of where things look as you move different pieces, right? There's all these different levers when it comes to retirement. Like, how much are you going to spend? When are you going to retire? When do you claim Social Security? Like, as you change the levers, do you want to work part-time? How does that change things? What does it mean for the long-term implication of that person? Giving someone a sense of what that looks like. Because what I don't like is someone just saying, oh, if you work until you're 67, you're going to be fine. Okay, well, like, what if they want to retire at 65? Like, what does that look like? What happens if they have to retire at 65? Like, what if they can, what if they stop working at 67, but get a part-time job, or they don't actually access any of their savings? They don't, they can delay claim Social Security and then retire when they're 70. How does that change maybe their savings today? So I think, like, to me, it's giving a sense of all the trade-offs, not just kind of a single plan, but a range of plans around their overall situation.
Yeah, I'm hearing it's as a financial advisor, you should be helping the clients help them control what they can control and maybe
Right.
focus less on the things that they cannot control.
Right. And prepare them for the likelihood of those bad events happening. I think that, most Americans who retire early do not choose to do so. It is some kind of involuntary act. If they're laid off, they have a health issue, their spouse does, something happens that requires them to leave the workforce. Creating that awareness, like, hey, like, you want to keep pushing this off, that's fine. You plan to work forever. Most people don't do that. I think to me, it's just creating this awareness, this knowledge of what is possible to happen. What does it mean if it does? That's all you can do. Like, I do all this research on safe withdrawal rates, and it's just expectations. Like, hey, like, this is what I think you should be doing. You can do whatever you want, but if you don't have kind of a frame of reference, you're not going to know where to start.
You got it. And of course, you mentioned that you kind of give some not personal advice, but you're doing research in the realm of 401ks, and so now we're talking about employers. What can employers do to help people get ready for retirement?
So, I mean, the first thing is just offering a 401k plan. Most large employers do this, but as you look at smaller and smaller employers, they become less likely. I know that they can be a pain, but it doesn't have to be. I think that there's a growing number of providers that exist in the smaller plan space to make it possible. So, to the extent that you're willing, just offer a 401k. You don't have to offer even any kind of employer contribution, right? You might want to have what's called a safe harbor plan, based upon your participation expectations. But I think that, giving your employees access to a workplace retirement plan will hopefully and usually do dramatically more for them than other things in terms of getting them ready for retirement. So the first thing is, having a 401k, if you've got one, ensuring that, you have a reasonable employer match. If you do that, it's next ensuring good participant behaviors. Have you done any kind of, like, re-enrollment? In a lot of plans, you join the plan, you make a series of decisions around the investments and your savings rate, and then you're done. I think a best practice is to kind of force participants to kind of reevaluate those choices, like every year, every 3 years, where you say, hey, you chose not to participate. I'm gonna enroll you in the plan if you're not going to do that. If you're in the plan saving less than say 8%, I'm going to increase everyone's savings rate to 8% unless they choose otherwise. Those are things that you can do as an employer to kind of improve on existing behaviors. If someone made a decision potentially when they joined the plan, or just at some point they changed their mind, that isn't what's best for them today.
Awesome. Great. You gave us some top action items here. If you're feeling, oh my goodness, I'm 55 and retirement's gonna look horrible. Well, there you go. We each got some ideas, whether you're an individual financial advisor like me or you're part of a employer, and what you can do there. Now you're part of Prudential, and I think one of my favorite things about Prudential is that they may have coined, maybe even trademarked the term retirement red zone.
Redzone.
So
Indeed.
tell me more about the retirement red zone and how should people prepare for that?
Well, I mean, so the retirement red zone, I think technically, I think it's like it's the 10 years before retirement and the 5 years in it. I think that it is the most important part of a retirement plan. If you're a football fan, it's the most important, it's the more important zone of the football field. Like your earlier question, like that's when you need to know that you've got a solid plan and you know what you're going to be doing, right? Mistakes around retirement are incredibly costly, right? If you make a bad decision about saving or investing when you're 35, you've got 30 years to make it up. Right? You've only got usually one-ish go at retirement. So just ensuring that, as you're moving towards retirement, you're making the right decisions. I think that's what the red zone is. It's kind of acknowledging that this is a really important period for you. Make sure that you're making the best choices possible.
Yeah, it's that's right on. And it's I like how you said that mistakes around retirement are incredibly costly. I was thinking about this recently, where you're 25, you retire at 65, you probably have 1,000 paychecks you'll get, and
Yeah.
it's 1,000 different chances to make a mistake on your 401k and your investing, and learn from it and grow. But you fill out your pension paperwork, and I've seen it where you've got 14 days to change it. And by
Yep.
the time it gets to the mail and you get the confirmation, you're done, right? You get one shot at filling out the pension. A lot of times it's one shot at your 401k rollover, or even your Social Security. There's some slight changes where you can maybe make an adjustment there, but in all practical purposes, you get one
Right.
chance at your Social Security. So yeah, mistakes around retirement are incredibly costly. That's a 6-word phrase. I'm gonna keep that sentence in mind because that's very very helpful to know.
Well, so if I go back to my Morningstar days about a decade ago, I did research on gamma, which is like quantifying the value of an advisor. And I would never want to suggest that advisors can add value all throughout the life cycle, when you're young, when you're old. But like, this was with Paul Kaplan, we looked at it, we're like, man, like the decisions that you make, like at and around retirement are without a doubt, if you add them all up, like the most, like it's the point where advisors can add the most value, because there's all these decisions you have to make that, to your point, once you've made, you can't undo them. And so making sure that you're making the best decision possible at that point in time is really important. I think that's where the value advisors can just really shine.
Yep, you got it. Well, thanks for sharing with us about the great midlife retirement crisis, what we can do about that. I've got one more question for you, David, but before that, tell me, how can people reach out to you?
So the best way to kind of track me or follow me is on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, but that's where, if you want to kind of see what I'm up to, hear what's going on, that's the best place to find me.
Yep, you got it. And my final question is, generally tell us something about yourself that few people know about. I've got to adjust that though, because you're on our podcast about 6 or 7 months ago, and your answer then, I believe, was that you are a twin, and you're about to find out if you are identical or fraternal twin. And I'm curious here, if you don't mind sharing, what's the results? How's it look for David and twin Blanchett?
So my twin brother Brian and I, we are identical twins,
Okay.
which was a bit of a surprise. So growing up, we always believed we were fraternal. The primary reason for that is I can't fold or roll my tongue,
Okay.
and my twin brother can, and that is largely a genetic trait. My wife had read where some people like myself just have, I guess, bad tongue folding skills, and as it turns out, we're identical. So it's interesting, to grow up for 42 years thinking you're fraternal and correcting everyone that you're not identical, and then finding out that you are in fact identical. So the odds that said were like 1 in 200 million. I don't think that's technically correct, because we knew we were twins. It was just the type of twin we were, but
Yeah.
it seems pretty certain that I'm an identical twin. So
That's great. Well, speaking of odds, I should have taken some odds on that, because I was pretty convinced. I found a picture of your brother Brian. I was convinced you guys were were identical. So I should have taken the odds and placed a wager somehow on that. I don't know if
Well,
that's on the Caesar Sportsbook at all.
I'd always said that if we weren't identical, because we didn't know for certain, we were the most identical fraternal twins you'll ever meet. Because we obviously know twins, and some of them you wouldn't know they were brothers or sisters. But my brother and I were always very, very much alike, but
Mhm.
we're identical, so that settles it.
Yep, excellent. Well, you're one of my favorite retirement researchers. Glad you could make it on out. Thanks for sharing some more of your research, David, and appreciate your time.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to the Retirement Reveal podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you'll feel better about your money and you'll make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil, owner of Keil Financial Partners. And if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, make sure to go to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.